Redditors who have been clinically dead. What did you experience in death, if anything? I was dead for 6 minutes. I was laying on the gurney, and I was getting colder. Somewhere my body started warming up and everything became really calm and peaceful. I was not longer in pain. All the noise from her just went away. It was really enjoyable. I was thinking about my daughter, and I was remembering all the things we had done. Slowly it was just black and nothing. There was no knowledge of anything. I explain it as it was like before I was born. Then the worst thing in the world is being revived. I started hearing loud noises. I felt this massive pain. Then there was the nastiest stench ever. The smell was like every dead animal had crawled in my nose. The smell was so bad I started vomiting. I remember the DRs turning me on my side and watching my vomit spray on a nurse. Dying was the most pleasant thing I have ever experienced, and being revived the worse. Not really sure what happened and it still freaks me out to this day. My daughter was 4 and developed pneumonia. Her breathing would stop in her sleep, so we took her into the emergency room. She was there for a total of 5 days. For the first 3 days her health kept deteriorating, and on the 3rd day my girlfriend got a call that her mother had collapsed and was taken to the hospital. She was without oxygen for 20 minutes and was declared brain dead. That night my daughter woke up and asked about grandma. No one had said anything to her or in the room with her. We asked her what did she mean. She told us that grandma came to her in a dream and said it's not your time yet. I'll go for you. Immediately the next day she was almost 100% better. Anaphylaxis, wasn't breathing. I considered all the hallucinations I experienced likely due to hypoxic episode until I told my mom what I saw. A middle-aged man who wasn't in scrubs standing still at the end of my bed while all staff were running around and doing their business. I was having a non-verbal conversation with him and he was telling me to calm down, focus on breathing. He wore a tropical style button-down shirt, one of those old school newsboys hats, and had a very pleasant demeanor. Mom showed me a photo of my grandpa that I never had seen before, and it was the guy at the foot of my bed, and he died before I was even born. Not mine, but the head of my program was in a horrible car accident. She was dead for a few minutes on the scene, while paramedics worked on her. She said it was the most amazing feeling she's ever experienced. It was black nothing, but that was perfectly fine, and she felt a comfort she can't even explain. She remembers being angry at the man working on her when she finally came back to her body because she wanted to stay there. She told us she can't wait to experience it again when it's really her turn. I was electrocuted by about 13,800 volts. The doctors say it's likely the first hit stopped my heart and the second one started it before I was pulled like a lifeless corpse to safety. I remember experiencing the darkest dark and the most silent silence. I ceased to care that I was dying. Time seemed to change. It could have been hours, it seemed. It was only about 30 seconds. I felt as though I was floating and floated towards something that I eventually realized was my body and reality. Upon joining with whatever it was I was floating towards, I became self-aware in my body and heard the electricity making horrible noises and knew I was in danger. From there it was a horribly painful experience where I lost most of my toes due to tissue death and had severe electrical burns on all 4 limbs. More surgeries than I care to count, and seeing the round bone ends of my toes that were freshly amputated still haunts me a little. Not me personally, but my grandmother, after giving birth to my uncle, was clinically dead for a bit. She told me that she felt herself rising out of her body and she ended up in the top corner of the room with a view over her bed and the doctor. It was then that she willed herself back to her body and was alive again. I was dead for a very short period of time, like 30 seconds to a minute. There's a big misconception about it. It's not like sleeping at all. I'll try to explain. There's always a sort of white noise in the back of my mind. It quiets down when I sleep, but it's still there. I never noticed it before I died, but I do now. I don't want to romanticize death, but when I was out, it was like this perfect nothingness. And nothingness is so hard to imagine normally, but once you experience it, and they bring you back, part of you wishes you could have stayed. There's no positive feelings there, obviously, but it takes away everything bad too. All your stress, the nightmares, the troubles, all gone. Just nothing exists. It's beautiful in a way. I'm not suicidal at all and hope to live the rest of a long and happy life. But I'm very much looking forward to a lack of consciousness when I do eventually pass again, and I can honestly say I don't fear death anymore. Not necessarily clinically dead, but I was pronounced dead 2 times in the same night after a car accident I was in when I was 16. My great grandma pulled me out of the car and we walked through this really peaceful field of flowers. When I woke up 2 weeks later, she was sitting on the edge of my bed and told me to tell my mom that everything was going to be okay. My great grandma died when I was 10, and before that she had been bedridden after a stroke. I never saw her walk or heard her talk in my entire life. It was amazing and beautiful. I saw my grandpa. We talked for a while and he said I could go back with him or stay. I looked down and saw myself in that hospital bed with my brother holding my hand. He felt it turn cold, and I never saw him cry that way before. Went back into my body and felt more pain than I knew in my life. Been a year of recovery and I lost most of my memory, but I'm happy. I don't share it much, but I've had 4 heart surgeries, and in my first and third one I coded. You had to be conscious for these surgeries to get your heart to react appropriately. The first time it was just nothingness. Black. Just nothing. I can't even explain how long it felt like nothingness. And then I remember waking up with them over me saying, "We lost you for a second there. Are you okay?" The second time is the hard one to share. I woke up in a type of subway feeling thing, but everything was white. The subway, the tunnel walls we were speeding through. I didn't have a body per se. It felt like I was the subway at times, and at times it was like I was just looking out a window at the tunnel wall. It came to a stop, and it was just black nothingness again. And then I heard a voice of a much older man. He said, "Are you ready to go?" And I just had nothing. Like I didn't know how to speak. "We are going now if you're ready." And something inside me felt so ready to go. Like I was a magnet to it, this unknown destination in the black nothingness ahead. I remember finally saying, "Oh, okay." He said another time with a slightly different tone, "We'll be leaving here. You are ready to go?" And finally something in me snapped, and I remembered I had a life and people I'd leave behind. And my first thought was, I can't leave my girlfriend. I couldn't do that. And my mom and dad. My puppies. I can't leave any of them. My family, my friends. And I made a decision I couldn't leave. I didn't even have to say it. Once I decided I couldn't leave, and I was for sure staying, I woke up and came to consciousness with the medical team all around me. This happened well before my GF and I got together, but she intentionally overdosed on methadone and was clinically dead briefly at the hospital. She said she could see the doctors and her husband in the room from above, and then she found herself in a meadow with her first boyfriend just talking like nothing had happened. Then she felt herself getting pulled out of there abruptly and suddenly sprang up with her eyes wide open, and she was back to life. So this is secondhand from my dad, but he was always a little shaken up when he told this story. Years before I came along, my dad was cruising around on his motorcycle when a little dog ran into the road straight at him barking. He swerved so he wouldn't hit the poor pupper, and a car in opposing traffic did as well. My dad got clipped and thrown off his bike. It was on a hill, so he slid pretty far until his body hit a parked car. Now the weird part, he always got this sort of haunted look when he talked about it, which wasn't very often. He says he remembers, plain as day, standing at the bottom of the street on the corner watching as a man got hit off his bike and tumbled through the air and down the hill. He says he remembers thinking, that guy's definitely going to die. He woke up the next day in the hospital with a nurse picking gravel out of his back. He had reconstruction surgery on his hand and arm, which consists mostly of metal pins now. Remember kids, if on a motorcycle, always wear your leathers and helmet. Without them my dad would have died, and I wouldn't be around. Clinically dead on 2 separate occasions. I didn't experience any visions or light, and I didn't feel anything at all. It was like a switch was flipped, and my existence was just shut off. Coming back was another story. Slowly I was able to hear the voices of those around me fading in, and they slowly got louder until I was able to open my eyes. That's it. Nothing spectacular. 1 second you're here, 1 second you're not.